RJ's ready. Yep. I moved him in Discord. Don, I haven't moved you in Canvas because I didn't know if you had any notes. Do you have any collaboration notes that you want to copy before I change your group? It's no big deal. Just let me know when you're ready for me to change it in Canvas, because I could add you in Discord real easy, but I didn't want to make it where you couldn't see something that you needed to see. I wasn't sure what it would do to you. You should still have access too. Okay, Tori's out there and the Great Beyond.
I'm just sitting here just thinking. If you get on.
Do what? Yeah. He was going to be gone today.
Oh.
He had some, I can't remember, he had something going on today. And then even Isaac, has Isaac talked to you about how he's going to be working from home for a little while?
No, he never did.
So he's using on that he'll be at home for a little while. It's sort of non-COVID related medical thing going on, so he's going to be out for a little while. Ivy should be here. She's usually here. I hadn't heard anything from her. So work with Isaac. He's really around. Our other two are in good shape. Yeah, Tori Greg was going to be gone today, and I haven't seen Garrett yet. She might be on your own. All right, let's get started. On Discord, on our C# server, if you've noticed, there's some extra channels in this channel, in class programs. This is where I intend to post things that we do in class. So you are welcome to remind me. And so I posted out there this morning our patient CS file that we created the other day and our COVID patient CS file that we created the other day. The pictures of our class diagram sort of that we had on the board. It doesn't take very good pictures with the reflection. So hopefully you can see. They look better on the big screen than they do on the small screen. And then I added a new .cs file so that we don't have to create that one today. So let's open Visual Studio and make sure we've got everything where it needs to be. Share my screen. Okay, Tori Garrett is here. All right, I've got, I think my screen shared and try to talk right and all that kind of stuff. Attendance for people that are here and not here. I just need to actually log it. Let's see, Isaac, I do not see. It's usually on, he's not. Having to start using like 10 minutes of the class to get attendance taken with all of our different requirements and things. Here soon I'll be like, let's just all stay home. Okay. Seems like a good plan, but we didn't have that warm fuzzy feeling. All right, so I've got the project open. Let's back up to how we started. When we created our original project, we created the patient tracker. And in that patient tracker project, we said that we wanted to create a class library. That's the template that we chose. So when we got that project open, remember we had the class1.cs file, we renamed it to patient, and we've updated our patient.cs file to carry information about a patient. So if I open that and I do my edit, outlining, toggle outlining to expand everything, I should see all of the code that we put in for our patient class. And remember, our patient cannot be instantiated because it's too abstract. We don't have enough information to actually create a full object. So we labeled this class as abstract. Within our class then, we had some private properties and some public, or some private data elements and public properties, I should say. And our constructors were set up in such a way that we would allow a little bit of flexibility for our users when they're calling our class. We could always add more. But when we set up our constructors, we said, well, we'll allow for somebody to create a patient with no information, just kind of a null patient, and then we'll fill it in later. We'll allow them to create a patient with just a name, an admit date, and we'll create the rest with defaults. Or we'll let them pass all of the data in and create a patient that way. We created a couple different methods for our base class here. An abstract method called intake notes. Remember, this one is abstract. That means we are not going to put any code in this class for it, but every class that inherits from this class must have that method. So it's required for them. Then we created a virtual method, and virtual means we are going to have code, a code body for this method in our base class, but classes that extend our class can override that method. Question, if we have a class that extends our class and it overrides this method, does this method in our base class ever get executed?
Default.
If it's being overridden, would it get executed? No, we would have to specifically execute it, because we'll look at that here in a minute when we do our toString. My husband's calling, that's unusual. Surely it's just an accident. Okay, and then we do override the toString, and we just put a couple of data fields in our toString override. We'll probably want to add a little bit more to that at some point, but for right now, that's all we've got. Let's look at our, okay, wait, before I go on. After we created our .cs file, we used the build command to make sure that we could build the DLL that goes along with this class file. So now we have an assembly associated with our patient. So we went and we created a new project, our COVID patient project. And in our COVID patient project, as we started creating our COVID patient class file, we needed to inherit from our patient class. And before we could put that in, we saw that we had to create a reference to that patient DLL. Once we created that reference, then we were able to say, hey, I inherit from the patient class, but I extend it. I add a little bit more. For my type of patient, I'm going to add additional information. So whenever I create an instance of a COVID patient, internally, whoops, that one doesn't work. I swear I just went down my side. Internally, in memory, ooh, I'm going to have my patient, and then I'm going to add more to it. It's going to be the COVID part. My husband is calling again. Sorry, I have to see what's going on. Something must be happening. Yeah? It's an accident. I'm like, are you dying? I don't think he is. Let's steward in. Okay. So we were able to add that reference and say, we can access all of that patient information when we create our COVID instance. A patient instance will be created and our COVID data will extend it. That's how we get that terminology. So let's add a new project. Let's add a maternity patient project. I've already got one. So you're going to go to your solution and add new project, or you're going to use your project menu to add new project and name it maternity patient and make it again a class library. Once you've got it created, let's rename that class1.cs file to be maternity patient and just copy in that code that I posted to Discord for that class. Now, if you take that CS file from Discord and you like drag it into this project, that won't work. If you want to take that CS file from Discord, you've got to like save it someplace, and then you can, on your project, add existing item and go find that CS file and bring it in. You can add it to your project that way, but you have to use the right procedure. Just dragging and dropping won't create the right linkage in your project solution. Remember, all of these things are dependent upon each other, and all of these background files are being updated when we add things to our project. I'm sorry.
Can you one more time say the right way to do it?
You're gonna right click any place you can get to add, and then you're gonna add an existing item and go find that CS file wherever you've saved it from Discord,
Okay.
and then add. Now, sometimes you can drag and drop, and if you get in the exact right place, you've got it, it'll work. The safest thing is to add that existing item, and then Visual Studio knows that you've added that file to your project. Now let's look at that maternity patient class. It's not fancy. I copied our COVID patient and I just changed it a little bit. Looking at the picture that we had left the other day, change that a little bit too. So I created a Boolean that'll be high risk. Then we went ahead, I just kept a date type variable and made it be the due date. And then I added a string for the doctor's name, the obstetrician. So we still just have the same kind of data elements. We could add more. And then the constructors, same thing. I just kind of modified this to be the same as our other class so that we would have two. But I'm getting some errors. Why am I getting errors?
Or you haven't done the reference.
Haven't put in my reference. So I do that by just putting the colon in the patient, right? Doesn't seem right. Am I missing something still? What else did we have to do? Yeah. So on our project, we have to look at our references. And I'm just going to go add project reference. In our project reference, It already has some of the basic information from our solution, the DLL files that it has found. And we want our patient, so I'm going to check that. I don't need the COVID patient DLL in this project. I just only need that parent. Perfect. Now I should be able to add that code that I inherit from the patient. And last time, we look at our dependencies. Our patient is within our patient tracker, so we went ahead and added that using statement for that. So we didn't have to put that full path name each time we referred to our patient. So that should clean up all the errors, hopefully, in our project. Except for it looks like I've got an extra closing curly brace at the end. I get rid of it. Look good. Let's build it. Now I could go ahead and build everything in our solution. I'll just build this maternity patient project. And I think I'm all set. Let's go look at our project folder. I want to right click on that solution and open folder in File Explorer. Now my project folder is a lot bigger than it used to be. Ooh, and I have this tester app that I've been messing with that I need to get rid of. Let me delete it while we're here. So our project folder now, I'm showing hidden files. Remember that's on your view menu. And you want to do that so that you can see those GitHub files, or in this case, TFS control file. So that .vs file is my source code that's telling TFS what to do. Then I have my COVID patient folder for that project, my maternity patient folder for that project, and my patient tracker folder for that project. So again, those could be completely separate, but we have them all in the same solution. So we've kept them all kind of bundled together. Let's create our tester. Now we'd like to be able to test these classes so that as we hand them off to other developers, we feel like everything is properly coded and in place. So let's create another project. Let's I'm going to do add new project. Now, has everybody got this project working to where you're ready to add the new one? Anybody need anything sent to them?
No, actually, I couldn't find the file in Discord, and a couple of us could. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to get mine added in.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get it added in.
Where's it at?
So it should be under your C# server, section 101 channels, the in-class programs. Can you see that? That would be the first problem if you can't see it. You can see it? You can't see that? Let me check. Let's fix it. I think it's blocking you guys from it. That would explain a lot. I shouldn't have to do this, but I'll do it this way. I never trust it. Can you see it now? So on our server, you should see this general 101 channel. Can you see that? Section 101 channels. Someone take over and show me what you can see so I can fix it.
You guys see what I'm seeing?
Okay.
This is what I see.
Click off of it and click back on it and see if those changes I made just did anything. You should be seeing this other area. I'm just going to put it someplace else if I can't make it where you guys can see it, because it's like, well, why can't you see it? There must be something. But it's so nice. I want you to be able to see it. I'll just move it.
You want me to stop sharing this further, or do you want me
I'll take it. I got it. Thank you. I'm just going to push this, put it in the chat of our Zoom session. And then in Discord, I'll just put it in our main general chat. Can you see it? Got it in a few places there for you then. We could have just coded it. That would have been easier. But I wanted you to see how you need to go about bringing something into your project from someplace else. So you can get it now from the chat, or you can get it from Discord from the general text channel of our C# server. And again, you want to create your project first. And then once you've created your project, you're going to add an existing item and pull in that CS file. Now, if your solution was named a little bit differently than mine, you might need to update that for your namespace statement so that it's all the same and all matching. Now, once you've got that pulled in, we have to add that reference to the patient class. You're getting all those errors, remember? So to do that, we're going to right-click on our project and add reference. We want to add the reference to our patient. Finding it. See my error. One more class, really. Make sure you're working on this. Okay, so we've got our example going here, and we need a tester. And you're going to need one for your project for next week's assignment. So let's create that project within our solution. Again, we could have a whole nother solution for it, but I want to create it within this solution. So let's add a new project. And this one, we're going to use a forms-based app as our tester. Whenever you're looking at your textbook, they like to use console apps as the testers, and that's a nice quick way for us to get something generated, but we can generate something pretty quickly with a forms app too. So let's try that. I'll call this patient tester. So let's think about this. We have two different types of patients that we could deal with, COVID patients and maternity patients. And of course, we would have lots of different kinds, surgical patients, and I don't even know what else that we might have. And in order for us to test all of our different classes, it would be good if we were creating instances of each of those with some different variety. And then we could display them, I guess, on our form. So there's lots of different ways we could go about it. If we had lots of time here, we could create, individual text fields for each of our different data items for our patient and do a nice full data entry type application. And then we could have like a list box that lists all of them, something like that. Since we're kind of pressed for time, we could also create something to just load a bunch of data, right? To just create some test data for us to use randomly. So we wouldn't be adding in the whole data entry thing of being able to add patients or change them. We would just be creating test data in mass to use in our class. So if we do that, we'd probably be okay with just a big list box on our form that just shows all of the data that we've generated. We can maybe enhance it a little bit as we go, depending on our time. But when we're in class, of course, our time is just so precious. So let's create, along with this thing, I guess I want it to be a completely separate class that just loads up our data. Let's create a new class inside our patient tester, and we'll come back to our form in a minute. So again, I'm going to add a new class. So when you're using Visual Studio, of course, the tool itself, as you guys are seeing, is part of what you're learning. We're not just learning the code, because this project especially is one of the main first ones where you see you can't just take the code from somebody else and make it work. You have to have the whole project from somebody else to make it work, right? So all of those intricacies of how everything is tied together within Visual Studio is a real important aspect of what we're learning here. It's not all just about the code. So anyways, this class, let's call it our database. It's going to be our fake database. And we'll just add this new class. In our class, I think we just need one method to just generate a bunch of data. So let's say we're going to create a method that returns an array of data. So we'll say that we'll return an array maybe of objects. See if it'll let me do that. And our method name will be load data. Add array declaration. Well, I can't have the void and that. array declaration there, can I? It's too early in the morning for me. What else do I need? Return, is it mad at me? Because I've got nothing. Okay, we'll make one. We'll make it happy for us. All right, so I would like to create some different instances of our different types of patient. We need to add a reference to those patient definitions to this project before we can do that, because our other projects know about it, but this one doesn't. So let's add our references. In this case, for this project, it's going to need to know about all three. So I'm just going to try something. Let's say I'm going to create a COVID patient. New patient. And then for our COVID patient, it says, oh, it's a namespace, but you're using it like a type. Well, it's confused because I need that using statement. Now I still have some errors. I'm going to have to just extend it out. And I'll tell you why. Be my lesson in never doing this again. The solution and the class name are the same. So Visual Studio is getting confused, right? So even if I'm adding a using statement, it's still demanding that full path name. How do I find this COVID patient class? Well, you have to look at the COVID patient solution. So it's a little messy, isn't it, that I have to use the full extended path? But that's all right. I can handle it. Now, I'm just trying to analyze what I've got here and figure out what I need to change. Because remember, this is my tester. So for a COVID patient, then I need to pass some data to create my COVID patient, and I can't remember what I need for my constructor. And notice that IntelliSense isn't being as helpful because these are separate entities now. It doesn't have access to the source code. I would have to do a little bit more when I create my class file for IntelliSense to be able to tell me what the parameters are to build a COVID patient. I would want to do that, right? But for now, I'm going to switch back over. And I know that I had that one constructor that just needed the name and the date. So I'll put some sort of name, test, patient, and then a date. I'll just say that they were tested right now. Now I'd like to have this object array to return to my caller so that I could load it up with a bunch of data. And so there's lots of things we could do to do that. Let's create that array. It's going to be an array of objects because some of these objects are going to be COVID patients and some of them are going to be maternity patients. Could I say that they're an array of patients? Probably. So we'll experiment with that, or you can experiment with it later because they'll both be types of patients. But for now, I'll just say the really generic term and say there's some sort of objects. So we'll just make this be our database. And we'll say it's an array of objects. And because we haven't done a lot with our array classes that we'll be looking at next, we'll make it a specific size. I'll say there's 20 entries. Of course, I could make this a lot fancier. So now instead of this first entry being a COVID patient having a new identifier as new patient, I'll just make that be an entry in my database. Now, because my array is already declared, I don't have to specify that data type. So I can just say, oh, the first entry in our database array of objects is this COVID patient. Now, again, we need a for loop, we need all sorts of fanciness, but instead we're just going to copy and paste. Let's create a few more. In my database, entry number index value 1, I'm going to make this be a maternity patient. I should be able to use the same data fields. I'll make this a test maternity patient, again with the daytime now. I'll copy both of them. I'll do index value 2 and index value 3. I'll make index value 2 test. Well, let's be mean here. It'll be COVID carry, and then just try some different stuff. We haven't messed with our date very much, but we could try some different things to have some different dates. When we're all done, then we can return our array of objects, our database. I want to be able to just call this directly. I don't want to have to create an instance of my database. So I need to make this method static. And remember, that means not only is there only one of them in memory, it means that I can call it directly without creating an instance. Anything else? What about the access level of this method? Is it okay like this? Is it going to default to private? Will I be able to call it from my form? Let's see, let's leave it. And then we'll know if we get any sort of problem that we have to change. Does that look like it's going to work for us? It's a good start. You got everything now, Tori? Is it working?
We have no reference problem. So we'll work through.
Can I have you share here? Share with us, please. There's probably someone else too, RJ, if you'll show us.
I'm not on chat there.
He's got it on the main, but not on.
Oh, okay.
You can't share it right now.
That's all right.
It says it's a reference, but it's not showing as a reference.
Not showing.
It won't allow me to use it. And it builds other than unless, you know, certain countries because they're like COVID patients. Okay, but it won't let me.
Okay, well, we'll fix it.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
find
not
it.
the class for that.
There's some silly things that can happen, that's for sure. All right, so we've got our little database generator here. Let's go back to our form. Because our form, we want it to call that little database thing and just display all of those data instances that we just created. So here on our form, let's find a list box control, and I'm going to add it to my form. And my list box control, let's rename it patient list. And remember, whenever we're working with a list box, it's basically just an array, right? So it's just that it's kind of empty and it's set up to be visual. So now that I've got my list box on my form, I want to double click on a blank spot on my form and let Visual Studio create that form load event procedure for me. So I want to be in my form load event procedure. And I'm going to create a list of objects. Patient array. And we're going to load that using our database. Oops, sorry, I switched on us. Database. Now, when I type that, I'm not getting anything in my dropdown that shows me that it knows about that method that I created. So I'm going to go back to my database class and add that public keyword or protected. Let's try protected. We want to use the most restrictive access level we can that'll work for us. So protected is more restricted than public. Protected says anything within the same project can access me, or anything that inherits from me. So let's see if protected will work in this case. Still doesn't like it, does it? So we have to go public. So protected, only things in the same project or classes that inherit from you. Now I can see it. And because this is a method, I need my open and close parentheses to indicate I don't have any parameters. Now that should give me a nice array. So I could do some sort of for each command or something to load that into the items of my list box. Let's try just, can I just push it right in there? Let's see, I have my patient list, and it's our items property that is basically the array for our list. Can I just set that equal to our patient array? So it can't do that. That's not going to work. So I'm going to have to loop through everything. No big deal. There's lots of different ways we could do it. We could use a for loop and have an index that we control using an integer. We could use a for each command. Let's try a for each command. So for each patient, let's call it just an item in our patient array, I need some parentheses there. What type should I use? It's missing that. It says, so you have to specify what data type you have. I could say patient again, because we know they're all patients. I could say object. We'll use object. So now everything that is an item within my for each loop is one of our test data entries. So it's either a COVID patient or a maternity patient, right? It's one or the other. When we add that to our list box, we may need to know that, but let's do some testing and see. So I'm going to update my patient list, my items property, and I'm going to add the item. So I love it when we end up with like 2 or 3 lines of code after a whole bunch of work. Does it do anything? Should we try it? Try it. I've got to make this project be the one that executes, right? Because right now, Visual Studio isn't going to do the right thing. So I'll right click on Patient Tester on that project and set it as my startup project. And then I can just use my start button to run it. Oh, it's mad at me. Value cannot be null. Would we have empty items in our array?
Yes, we do.
Do we? Because we said it was like how many entries and then we just created 4. So we do have some. So how could we handle that? Could I put an if statement in to check my ugly old array? Let's do that so that we know how. So if our item, can we say is null? Not null? That sounds better. So like that? Doesn't like not null.
Use is null or empty string. Yeah, it is null.
Is null. Mm-hmm. I can change it. How can I change it?
How about string dot is null or white space, parentheses, item, parentheses.
So are you finding stuff online? Shall we look? Yes, sir.
So I know with PowerShell, at least you can't have something equal to null. Rather, you can have null equal to something. So I don't know if that applies here to C#, but that's how I did in mine.
They're saying, here's what he's talking about. We have a lot of different ways. I'm going to look because you guys are right. There's all sorts of different ways we could do it. So here's one. They have if name equals null or if name is null. Oh, notice that that's a new is keyword. That's kind of nice to know. Here's where they did a not. So we just have it kind of embedded in a couple sets of parentheses. We should be able to say is not null with C# 9.0. It doesn't like it. I have the not in. Nope, still don't like it. So we could do, they had the example where they had the not operator in a separate pair of parentheses. It takes that So just a little bit of squirreliness. Sorry, sometimes with C# you have to do a little fiddling with syntax. And it looks like it's going to take this. So we're saying if the item in our array is null, kind of ignore it. And of course, Aaron is right. We should change our array to be a list or something that doesn't require that specific size. But we need to know how to do this anyway. All right, let's run it. Do we get something in our list box finally? I do, and it looks like I'm getting more from my maternity patients than I am from my COVID patients, but we're getting some information out. If you look at your COVID patient class, you'll see that we didn't really necessarily override the two-string method. So we're just using the two-string method for our base class, our patient class. But in our maternity patient class, we did override and add some additional data. So that's why we're seeing that extra stuff. Okay, so we have a good tester here. We've got some information that's being displayed. As we work with our project, we'd like to be able to make sure that our different constructors are valid. Try creating these different entities using our different constructors. So let's try that with our database. Think about the things we need to test here for this application. Where am I? I want to go back to my form code, which I'm kind of looking at. I want to find my database class. I'll copy these last two. So these will be entries 4 and 5. And then I think we had like 4. So for our maternity patient, I'm just going to use it as an example. We could pass in the name, the admit date, then we'd have to add the high-risk Boolean, the date time of their due date, and another string for their doctor. So let's add that. So for pregnant Patty here, I'm going to add a few more data items. We'll say, oh, I think I'll say true because the default is false, that they're not high risk. And Patty is high risk. And then we'll make her due date. Do what? Max value? Okay, let's try it. I don't even know what that would be. Can we do that? I've never tried it. We'll see. That sounds good. That's going to be the never-ending pregnancy from you know where. And then the last thing would be the doctor. So, Dr. Leroy. Okay, so that takes care of our maternity patient where we're using our additional constructor parameters. But what about our COVID patient? In our COVID patient class, the additional parameters that we added were the positive, negative status, the date of their test, and their notes. So let's say that Carl is positive and his test date. I want to see the date time minimum value now. He tested a really long time ago and tested before we knew. Now we should be able to see our additional data type entries there, test data. And I see them, they're there. Now, what good does that do? Well, it makes sure that all our constructors are valid. We didn't have any sort of problem. We don't have data mixed up. You know, that would be a thing for us to check. What if we had a parameter out of order, you know, where we were accepting in a string for one thing, but it was really something else. So we're testing all of those kinds of things here, that we have all of our class information valid. We're not crossing anything over or mixing anything up. So let's run it in the debugger then, so that we can really see what's going on here.
One question on that. So COVID Carl, am I seeing that right? It's nothing after admit. Is that, we put in,
Is that because we had a problem with our parameters, or is that because our toString is no good? We should probably fix our toString. So our tester is pointing out that problem, isn't it, repeatedly, that we have an override for the toString in for our pregnant patient, our maternity patient, but not for our COVID. So let's fix that. Now, that would be in my COVID patient class. And in my COVID patient class, I do not have an override for the system toString method. So I need to add that in. So I'll just add it at the end. Now, whenever I'm overriding the toString, whoops, I pressed tab and it went crazy. I want to make sure that I'm using the uppercase string as my data type. Oh, it changed it to lowercase. So we'll see if that, it seems to be working properly. So they might have fixed that problem. That might have just been a bug in the 2017 version. That would be good. The original code that's here is return base.toString. Well, that would give us the value from our parent. And I would like to have that because, you know, our parent's toString method returns the name and the admit date, and we could change it to return all of the other information about the patient. So let's set up a string to hold our return value, and then empty string here. And then let's set that return message to start out with the toString output from our parent. Then let's add to it. The next thing I want to add is going to be our positive negative flag. So we'll put that in. And if you notice, we could do something to separate. We could use commas because comma separated values are common. We can put this, I put this dashed line as a break to kind of try to separate our different fields, because I don't necessarily want them to all go to a new line like we did a lot in our previous programs. So I'll just put this kind of break thing, and that's the shift backslash, so the key above enter. Now I'm going to add some more to that message, and I'll just add a line for each of the different data elements that I'd like to output. I want to send the date tested. And for my date tested, I'd like to format that. And I think I'll use the D. And I did a little bit of a quick Google search before we started. And on Microsoft's documentation, you can find a really nice summary of all of the different formatting parameters that are available for date, time, data types. So I'm going to try to use this lowercase d that just formats it just with the date. Because we've seen already that's can be a pretty huge field. I want to add a bar to that also. Next, I want to add the notes. And that should do it. I need to return that string then. And that should finish up our toString. We have to build this now. We have to rebuild it. Because remember, it's not really part of our tester project. So we need to generate our revised DLL. So let's use our build menu. And I want to rebuild COVID patient. Okay, now I want to go look at that folder, my project folder. When I look at my COVID patient project, go into my bind folder, debug, my COVID patient DLL is dated today at 9:03. So notice how important it is that I have my view set this way. I'm going to pin my view menu so you can see it. But on my view menu, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the details view so that I'm seeing that date and time it was modified. And I want to make sure that I'm seeing file name extensions and hidden items, just because as a developer, I always want to see those options. Now, when I look at this, then I can see the time that my COVID patient DLL file was generated. Great. Let's go back to our solution project folder and let's look at our patient tester. In our patient tester, this is our Forms app. Let's go into our band debug folder. Look, it's still using the old one, right? So right now, even though we have this new DLL out there, we have to actually tell this project to use it. So we still have to update our reference. Does that make sense? It's not going to automatically update it for us. If you build your whole solution, it will. I built just the project. So make sure you're absolutely sure of which part you're building and which part you want. Because what if I didn't want to do that yet? You know, I wasn't ready to update that DLL. I wanted to make sure that I had the two different versions. So notice the difference between those build options. Because I just built the project, it didn't update my other one. Now I'll go back and do that and build that whole solution or rebuild my solution. And that's why those smarties added that option for us. So we wouldn't have that sort of issue. Now I'm going to go check, make sure that I'm looking at the right one. Ah, much better. So now I've got my new one. So always be aware of where your DLLs are and which one you're looking at. Now let's run it. What we did here, stepping back, is we updated our COVID patient class library, right? Because it had a flaw. We don't like that missing the toString stuff. So now we're getting our good information out of our COVID patient like we should. So we're using that new version of our class. Let's do one last thing. When somebody clicks on one of these lines, let's make it pop up a message box with some information about that item. Okay. So I want to go to my form design to start, and I'm going to double click on my list box because I want this event to kick off whenever somebody clicks on an item in my list box, whenever they click on a selected index. I'm going to create a work field that's just an object data type. One. I'm just going to be able to use that then as we work with our stuff. So how do we want to instantiate this one? That should be the one that we clicked on. So to get that, we're going to look at that patient list, our items, and we want the selected where's my selected stuff?
It's not on the item, it's the spot dot selected item, or selected index.
Say that real loud.
So it's not underneath items dot selected, it's
I'm just in the wrong place. Thank you, sir. That's what I want. That's pretty easy. I was just making it too hard this morning. So that should work, right? Let's see if we can check to see what kind of thing that is. So in our textbook, they said we have the is property that basically this object should ring true if we say, is this a COVID patient? So let's check. If this one is a COVID patient, I'll have to do the .COVID patient. Let's do a message box. And I just am going to leave it like that because I just want to see if that if statement is going to work accurately. So let's try it. So I'll try one of my, oh, okay, that's good. Now I'll try a maternity patient. Ah, good, I didn't get it. Spiffy whiffy. Okay, so we would use that a lot, right? Because if we did create that data entry area where we could type in all of our text fields and stuff, we would have to know what kind of object we were working with to know what to display to our user. Right? We would have to do some different things there so we could keep it all. So let's put an else and say else if this one is a maternity patient. That way we'll be sure. Give us that double nice cozy feeling that we've got everything just right. Looks good. Everybody okay?
Mhm.
Is it working? I love it. So good project here for us. So we have our forms-based application. That's our tester. So we don't have to, you know, go to the dark side and use a console app. We can actually stay on the bright side. But within our forms-based app, we're able to manipulate our object from the point of creating it, putting it into the list box, taking it out of the list box. And as long as we handle things properly, we're able to retain the identity of that object. It knows what it is, and it knows what data elements it contains. It knows its actual state of being from all of that instance data that it's carrying around. So we can keep track of all of that. Questions about it?
When we went in and updated the toString and it rebuilt the DLL, I still can't get it to present the updated message.
Let's share with us. Good.
And I've got 2 different screens going, so I can't. I've got the same problem Rich does. In the future, I won't do that, but.
Well, that's okay. But we want to all see what's going on so we can fix it. Let me show everybody one last thing, and then we'll fix everybody's problems. This one, what I want to do is kind of, let me close all of these tabs first. And I want to show you a way to create this tester app with like no work. Okay, so let's create another project. I want to add a new project. This is going to be a forms-based app again. And come with us on this one, RJ, and let's see if this gets your new one or not. I'm curious. That'll help us debug it. So our new form. Oh, thank you, sir. I forgot I wasn't. Okay. So I want to create a Windows Forms app. And this one is going to be my data source tester. Bless you. Now in this project, I want to add my references right away. So I'm going to add in the wrong place. Come on, you silly thing. I've already got references, sorry, within my forms. Within my forms project, I need to be doing that at the right place there, my add reference. And I'm going to pick my COVID patient, maternity patient, and the patient tester. Oops, no, I don't need that. Patient tracker, not tester. So my original patient, my COVID patient, and my maternity patient. Now, I'm going to add a new resource to the project called a data source. So right-click on your project and choose Add, New Item. And we want to find the data source item. Do you see it? Mine is already showing up as part of the project. So I don't know if it's going to let me see it as a new type of item. You're not seeing it?
Might be something we have to add.
I was able to do it just the other day. Add new data sources. Sometimes it's just got too many wonderful pieces. See, because I can see this data source tool now, so I can add a new data source using it, but it's not letting me show you how I added that tool originally. So we'll look at this next week, because I don't want to waste your time or I'll bother you in just a few. I'm right there. It's making me mad. Project, add new data source. Do you see it? Someone sees it. Yay. Okay, so project. Add new data source. I don't see it. I'll have to fight with it. So being jerk. So see what we've got? It's fine that I can't show you what I was going to. It's just a real fancy, easy, quick way to do something. And I can show it to you later. It doesn't have an impact on what you needed to do. Do what? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Menu. Just go to project and then there's an add new data source thing on the project.
On the actual project menu?
On the little tab thing on the top.
You might have to come up here and show me. There it is. So we're not seeing it on our right-click add menu. Violation of Visual Studio rules. Thank you, guys. So let's go up there and do it real fast. Project, add new data source. Now, we're going to be looking at this later on in the semester when we work with databases. So I thought, well, I'll show it to you today, and then that's fun, isn't it? So when we're working with a database, we'll choose a database as our data source. But we don't have a database yet, but we do have an object. So let's choose object as our source for our data. And next. Now, it looks at our references and it says, well, I find these types of objects in your project. Are any of these what you would like as your data source? Let's just choose one of them. I'm going to choose our COVID patient and finish. Now, you should have a tab over here for data sources. Can you see it? Because my screen is hiding that little part. So I'm going to go to my data sources. And I want to expand that first entry so that I'm looking at my COVID patient. When I expand that, it's going to show me all of the data elements that are in that class. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to choose how I would like this COVID patient data to be laid out on my form. So right now, it's got this icon that it's set to data grid view. I'm going to change it to details. Now that I've changed it to details, I'm just going to drag that COVID patient onto my form and drop it. Now, by using that data source, I can run this. Let me make this project my active project. I'll run it. You can see that our form would require a little bit of cleanup from us. Let me minimize this so you can see it. Minimize 75 things. So when we created that data source and we dragged it and dropped it onto our form, Visual Studio said, oh, you have all of these data elements, properties, I'll put those all on your form. And then it created this little navigator tool for us. So I can click the plus sign and then I can add a new entry. So let's say, I don't know, this one is showing us all of our patient data fields that we weren't seeing in our tester because our tester didn't exactly test every option. Patient name, some notes, our positive, negative checkbox, we'll put in our physician. Now that I've got data typed in, I'm going to click the plus and it'll save it. Now it's on my second record of 2 ready for me to enter data, but I could click the back button and see that data that I just entered. So this is just the data that is only relevant for this run, this execution. You know, it's not persistent, it's not saved anywhere, but it's saved internally within this navigator tool for Visual Studio. So I can really quickly create classes and then using them as data sources, I can create some sort of tester app for people to look at. And we'll see that we can do this kind of thing with database tables where we can drag them and drop them as data sources to connect everything. So, pretty cool. All right, so I just wanted to show you that real fast. Sorry, it's a newer tool and sometimes they're hiding in Kludgy and we'll get it all figured out. Everybody get it? Get to see it? It's like magic. Yay. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to try to get everything saved. And I need to check my stuff in because I didn't have this at home and I couldn't fix it.
So for this, should we have each individual project saved to source control separately or the solution saved to source control?
Either one is fine.
Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Again, that would be a decision you had to make when you were doing it. And you guys on this one, especially, don't worry too much about what your folders are named in TFS. That's why I say just tell me what you named it when you turn the project in Canvas, you know, in your notes or comments so that I can find it. Because when we're working with these, I don't want people to spend hours just trying to get them organized in the names that it says on the assignment. The only reason I give you project names in the assignments is because I get a lot of students who are really rigid in their thinking and they've come out of those 101 classes where they're so scared they're going to name something wrong that they just freak out and they're like, what do you want me to name it? What do you want me to name it? And so I'm like, okay, name it this, but I don't really care. I'm just wanting to be able to find it and grade it and make sure that it all looks good. Because some of you guys come up with really amazing, awesome, great naming standards. And you should use those because they look really good. Okay, I'm going to try to fix everybody who's got problems. Let's see what we can do. So your assignment for next week is to get started on your tester. The other part, the interface, we'll talk about Monday, but do take a look at that chapter. It's a backup chapter. I think that maybe 6, but it's definitely an earlier chapter that talks about interfaces, and we'll talk about those a little bit Monday. They're real quick and easy to create. You're not the person. I'm sorry. Whoa, is this week ever going to get over? I don't think it will. Uh-huh. Oh, okay, so let's look at your, so this one, where's your?
So that's the problem,
Okay. So when you, have you built that, do you have the deal for that?
Well, it's my 21st birthday, mine as well.
Why not?
Well, I think as soon as I get paid,
Good.
that's your it's done. Straight after the.
That's what you're sort of natural stuff. So you want to pay that to your change your view.
Yeah, actually, it's really cool.
Yeah, my parents don't like their own.
I don't like to take them off.
Oh, okay, so you're already into this.
But I
All
really
right,
want to put the celebration cigar,
okay, so let's go here.
but since I can't purchase cigars, that's it.
You've got the reference in for it?
I never knew that they changed it in December. Yeah, I know that. I still thought it was 18. Well, anyways, I can go. I guess we're good. Learn the code.
Oh, I don't know. That's what it's So that's it. So the problem is what we're looking at. Are the same. And so it's names concerned about class. So if we make these people. So let's keep the virtual. So it's the same. It's really frustrating. So yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same name. Right, so you put that in your message. So yes. So as soon as you create that. Just two different things. I figured I was just shooting the gun. I think it's a really nice feature. I don't know why. I was able to wait that. Good. So, yeah, so you probably, so you don't throw things at them or hit them or anything, you're not one of those people. That's why I take one.
Just
I don't even know.
So,
what I have is the fourth.
So that's why it'd be perfect for the subclass all time, but the team names would be a part team.
I didn't do a very good, I may not have done a very good job, that's what I was trying to explain, was he pointed out.
I think this is definitely chapter 5 or 6. It's chapter 5 or 6.
I have
6.
I don't know why.
I have not.
Yeah.
Coach names, or team name, player.
I don't know what to do.
School name, player equipment.
Trying to catch up to.
Yeah,
When you said that
I
this
think
morning,
those
said
are.
that this morning,
I figured out it.
Those would be the main things.
Oh, that's a test?
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause
Thank you.
it's on.
I was basically just copying.
I didn't want to pretend.
So I figured out my problem.
So I figured out why it's not populating. I'm just trying to figure out the problem.
Okay.
I can't even clear money.
I wanted another integer kind of thing.
I know there it is.
I closed that. Where did we see this line that was? Okay. So when we figure this out, it was a football
Seasons.
for whatever reason, I had notes in there.
Oh,
And it does not.
yes, season works.
That's why I would put all through those because it's got does not implement inherited abstract.
It's hunting season. What's called?
So when I go to code,
Oh, we need that method. So remember, we have that abstract method in our base class and take notes. So if we don't implement that, then our classes won't compile.
What's the other string? All type there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you looked at her like you were going to
Yeah.
die.
Create class language directly at.
I sneezed a little bit there.
Standard.
And then I looked directly at you, since you look like you got death on your eyes.
Oh, it's like, I
I
know
might
what you're
actually-
talking about.
Because I went like this.
Okay.
You guys
Oh,
want
no.
that?
Yeah, but I was like this.
I'm excited.
So
Oh, good,
you wouldn't
okay.
have had to worry at all though. It's because
I don't
the
even
devil,
understand how that method is.
why is there flavors?
Well, smell and
Uh-huh.
inexplicably.
So
Try it.
Okay, great.
It's delicious.
All right.
Which again, probably
A tropical splash
is
is
better.
fresh
No,
salmon.
I think either way is
That's
bad
just, by the way,
benefit.
it's terrible.
So, you know, that.
I'd rather go with tropical.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
what was the other thing that you had for, it was
Uh,
all type of.
Oh, it was.
I know.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I know it's gonna be lost.
I'm on five.
Might as well
He says.
make it easier on yourself.
Use the fourth edition.
That's what last
Use
semester
fresh
is.
salmon.
Last semester.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
Chapter 14, in this book, is it not written book? Is it this one? Is it?
Oh God, it's like apples. That smells like apples.
I can answer this question. When I get home. Because I remember when it starts talking about orgasm, so it was.
6, chapter 5.
I can't smell with this thing on. I
Part
gotta
of
breathe
chapter
harder.
6 was in 11.
Mhm.
It smells, it smells better, but.
Chapter 11.
Yeah, there's no really good smell
Okay.
No, it doesn't
Yeah.
advance.
for it. I've got another.
So 4.
I still did like the look of death that he had on.
The
Brother, it's no mathematics.
Not when I don't have it.
You could be asymptomatic.
So,
Oh, when you're sad that you lose. But
No, it wouldn't.
for me, it would be amazing, not for anyone else.
For like an old folks somewhere.
I've only visited there once, and I was
So we're going to page 6.
like, I do not like people folks.
Okay. So then it does. What do you-
I don't think I did it. I'm sorry.
Just read both.
Oh, no. If you've got them both,
Well,
I
that was,
would only read sections, just section 6.
that was like the big, everybody sighed on it over the summer. Like, even out loud, you could tell everybody sighed. When you said, just focus on the Doyle book. Everybody's like, Yes, because we were trying to read 2 chapters at a time, and one didn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. All right.
So,
Still getting better.
You're not alone.
no,
You're not alone.
Test coming up, right?
yes, but it'll be another week.
So we got 7 days to figure out where we're supposed to be reading.
Yeah, that's what I forgot. I wanted to make an assignment when you guys make the test. That's what we need.
I was totally.
Test questions. Well, I mean, that's a big issue because again, there is no test bank for this one.
All right.
And so we don't come up with questions. So what I'm thinking is I'm gonna just try to create questions that are like the MTA exam. So that are for this chapter that go along for that. And then that way, you guys don't have to worry about which text, but, you know, if we just talked about concepts, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be helpful. Well, Mary and I were talking about that.
That's the way it needs to be.
In
I would just forego our unit exam, but I was concerned about points.
Well, the cool thing about this is it's got questions in the back of the chapter.
Yeah, that way
like
this one
that.
has a good test
Yeah.
bank and stuff to go with.
So,
I think Mary and I were talking about that. That was really helpful. And it is what it is. The practice quizzes that you had previously. Wow, that was very helpful for. I would go, oh, I don't understand what this is asking, and I would go back and study.
Look at it. I think that it's very helpful to do things that way, so different people can do it in different ways. Like in my 120 class yesterday, you know, that we're getting for that first exam, and I tell them all to use that practice exam. And I just don't know how to say it, because it's like, those of you who decide not to use it, I will be able to tell. Because, you know, it doesn't matter how hard you study, you're not giving yourself the advantages of knowing what to expect.
Wow.
did you say that the practice exams out of these?
No, so
Yeah, once we,
you can go.
Okay,
Go
which
there, you
practice
can.
exam were you talking about?
for the 120 class.
I know, but we don't have them here yet. Okay.
Yeah, so don't worry.
Are we gonna do that?
It was really good, just to try to stress that.
Yes, please.
We're gonna get through this. You
You'll
help me
be
with that?
fine.
We're gonna get
You
through
got
this.
this, you got this, you're in such good shape.
I can keep up with your deal, but again, your examples are not real world in a sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're so low,
Mhm.
and I'm like trying to keep up going backwards in a sense.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, well, you guys are awfully like this little sneak thing, that's cheating.
What's that, isn't it?
This little,
I know, it's so hard to decide whether I should show people
I
or
like
not.
that. We should have read that.
that's cheating.
I don't see
And I
it
like
as cheating,
that.
I see it as a productivity tool.
So when, like, in the army,
Right.
you have to learn how to read a map, use a compass, all of those things, and
Uh-huh.
you do that over and over as a skill. And then they're like, okay, here's a GPS. You have to learn the baseline before you can. go
Right,
there, but-
take advantage of it, yeah. Yeah, because the thing is, like, you have developers who only know how to use the drag and drop stuff, you really do. And then they are just at a complete loss to fix something if it doesn't
Really?
work.
That's
Yeah.
like a SQL guy trying
Oh,
to
for
use the
sure.
designer, and when you look at that code, you're like, on a bar.
Yep, what is this, what is?
Good.
Well, and it's all hidden,
You tell that
because
you
it's all in
drag and
that,
drop.
it's all hidden in that nav tool, and I mean, it's really hard to find code and stuff too, so it's not a good tester. It is a cheat.
It is the cheat.
What time is your next class?
11:30. But
Okay.
you know what? I forgot my lunch, so I'm gonna have to run home and get it. For too long. I kept thinking, I feel like I forgot something.
Are you?
Gotta see.
Well,
I can ask
I'm
for
just
you.
trying to,
There's time
The
to
other
stop.
thing is, you gotta touch.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to think of, I want to write a new.
Yeah.